So, welcome to Photoshop Compositing, wherever you are. My name is Aaron Nace. We mentioned that earlier. I teach Photoshop primarily, also photography and Lightroom and some other programs. I have a YouTube channel, and also we have a subscription service on Flurn.com. So, we're going to start with a little bit of background around me, and then we're going to actually move into some examples. So, we've got 3 different composites we're going to be putting together in today's session. We've got a double exposure, super cool, something you can do incredibly quickly. Of course, Photoshop on the iPad, but you can do it in, on desktop as well. We've got some cool blending exposure tutorials. We're going to do basically how to make like jellyfish floating in the air in a forest, super cool. And then we've actually got a real cutout composite as well. So really cool examples. So let's go ahead and start this off with a little bit about me and my background and why I'm up here talking with you guys. So my background's in conceptual photography and also in Photoshop. Mostly these days I teach Photoshop, but I'm also still a conceptual photographer. I started shooting about 15 years ago, and the first project I really undertook was a self-portrait project. So did anyone use like Flickr.com like back in the day, like 2008, like 10 years? Yeah. That was like the jam 10, 15 years ago. Instagram didn't exist yet. It was like all on Flickr.com. So there was a self-portrait project called a 365-day portrait project, and I decided that that was going to be the way that I learned photography. So I signed up for this project and started taking pictures every single day for a year, and at the beginning it was just like taking pictures of myself in the mirror and stuff like that. But after time, I realized I need to get a little more creative with this to actually make images worth looking at. So that's when I started playing around in Photoshop and creating composite images. So I've got a few of those images to show you today. So this is part of a short series I did called Lunch with Friends, me with a panda bear eating McDonald's. Here I am with a gorilla eating Subway, and these are like stock images. I didn't photograph the gorilla or the panda. This is just images I found online. This gorilla originally was just like holding a stick, and I photoshopped out the stick, put it in a Subway sandwich, and then where you see the little indentation on the couch, that was just, I sat on the couch over there, and then I sat on the couch on the other side and composited those two together. Here I am with a penguin enjoying a bubble bath and eating Burger King. So you can see compositing, all these photos, by the way, were just shot in my parents' house. Like I was living at home. I had a job, but photography was just like a passion project of mine. This is not something I was trying to make money at. This was not a business. This was just like, I'm having fun with this. And all the stuff I was able to do every single day. I mean, I did one of these every single day for a year, and just the fact that Photoshop allowed me to do this made me just fall in love. So we've got some other ones. I'm just having a rough day, I guess, apparently. My head in a vise, and then you can see the blood is like dripping down, but I'm sideways, so it's a little bit more complex than just take a picture and then rotate me sideways, because I photographed the vise the other way around and let the blood drip down and composited those together. Let's see what we have. Me in the bathroom. So this is not so much a composite, but me learning a little bit of like art direction, some storytelling, and retouching. My self-portrait series, trying to look like other cool artists. Here I composited a little monkey on my shoulder. I'm free to Kahlo. Made little sprinklies. This was, in the original photo, I had like a flash like between my hand and my face. There was like a Canon speed light right here that was lighting this whole scene, and then I just photoshopped that out and added little crystal sparkles in there. Here we have me, like Sin City reference, like the graphic novel that they made a movie out of it, and I thought was super cool. So of course, anyone seen the Steve McCurry? Yeah, there's me as the Afghan girl. Here I am. I was feeling a little bit anonymous, like a boop, 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 scanning in the barcode type of guy, so I was trying to break out of the barcode system. My friend had I think it was a real human skull that like the top was cut off, so we got that thing, poured a bunch of water in it, and then photoshopped that together to make it look like my skull was open with a bunch of water coming out of it. Here I am in the corner of the room. This is actually, stuff like this is really easy to do with compositing because basically there was just a ladder here. I can draw on this. This is part of the iPad that I actually really like this iPad. But there was just a ladder right here, and I took one photo, like with this foot, like standing on the ladder, and then this other foot out here. And then I just like moved the ladder over, and then had this foot on the ladder, and then the other foot just out there. Just erase all that, boop, 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 boop. So just compositing those two pictures together, you get something like this. So this isn't like crazy Photoshop stuff that I'm doing. A lot of it's like just combining photography and Photoshop together. So simple tricks, like how do I make it look like I'm on the corner of the room? Well, actually get up there. Get up there on a ladder and then put that stuff together. Here I am as a half person, half tree, which is kind of just my fantasy because my dad's a horticulturist and I follow directly in his footsteps, and I'm super crazy into plants. We have a studio in Chicago, by the way, the Flern Studio. Got hundreds of plants. It's fantastic. It's like it's like a private terrarium jungle rainforest in our Chicago studio. Because I'm born and raised in Hawaii, so living in Chicago now, I'm like constantly cold, constantly missing tropical plants. So I just built my own like mini Hawaii in Chicago. So here I am as a half man, half tree, and of course, jumping into some milk splash, just having fun. So again, this was like, me having fun. This is not paid stuff. This is nothing that I was like trying to turn into a career, but I was having a blast. And after my year project was up, I decided, one, I had enough pictures of myself, so good there. Two, I was ready to start taking pictures of other people and start expanding my concepts and start doing like more advanced composites. And I wanted to go into the world of commercial and professional photography as well. So I started building a portfolio with that in mind. I'm like, okay, cool. If I'm gonna approach a potential client, they're gonna be like, oh, you can take pictures of yourself. Cool. Can you take pictures of anyone else? So that was the goal. So started doing some other more advanced composites. This is part of an image called Dark Force. It's actually a crazy wide image. It's a big panorama. But the background plate was taken in Utah. Those rocks in the backs are like literally just rocks that I, exposure corrected. Kind of made them look like they're hazy. And then the buildings back here, the lights from those buildings, those are all just lights from Chicago buildings. Got some of these guys in like outfits. I just love photography, this type of like Photoshop and compositing, like creative photography, because it allows me to do all kinds of fun stuff. Like for this, we built those little costumes, this just like burlap sacks we ripped up and like safety pin to a dude, right? So like there's a lot of creative stuff that I get to do to pull these images together. Here we have, this is actually shot in my apartment in North Carolina about 10 years ago. Again, compositing here, I can draw on here. So this all from boop, 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 this was just, like one still frame. This area of the composite was actually just some drywall I purchased at Home Depot and just like took a hammer and bashed it in, right? Just like a piece of drywall, like this big, photographed it, and then just enlarged it and made it look like it was the size of the wall. So like anyone could do that, right? You just take a picture of a wall, take a picture of drywall and put them together. And then, of course, I photographed this dude just like jumping backwards with a softbox in front of him. And then the city in the background that's just a still of New York City that I've got on a stock image website. And then a couple little tricks here, using just some like simple perspective calculations. There's always a vanishing point. Does anyone know what a vanishing point is? Yeah, cool. Anyone who's like taken perspective drawing, whatever. Basically like the whole train track things. If you look down a train track, looks like it vanishes into a single point. So you can calculate all kinds of cool perspective stuff for compositing in Photoshop. So basically we have one line here. You just want to make sure that all these lines kind of like go to a similar place. I didn't do a great job drawing that, but basically even stuff like this, you can calculate perspective based on just a couple little lines, which is pretty cool. Here we have a woman on her hanging from the ceiling by her hair. And in the original, there we go. In the original, there we go. The original image, there was just a stool right there. She was literally just like standing on a stool for the original photograph. and her foot was, out this way. So I took another picture of her foot, another picture of the scene without the stool, and composited those together. So this is just a few different images to get an effect like this. And then her hair really was there. We had like a light stand. We bought like a giant wig online, and then I had like a light stand that was just like holding it up to that little hole in the ceiling, basically. So anything that you kind of need to get, like this is similar to the ladder shot in the way that like I needed a light stand to hold her hair up for this, but the light stand wasn't, like that was in there for a frame, and then we took it out. And then, as long as you take a picture with and without something, it's super easy to remove anything that you want from a photo. So just a little example that, like anytime you're trying to pull off a special effect of like, for instance, like, I hope this isn't too heavy. Like, if you wanted to make it look like this chair was floating here, you could either like just hold it by like the back of it and then Photoshop out someone's hand, or you could even like, if it wasn't as heavy, you could like tie a rope to the top of it and just like have it, float in midair, and then just, clone stamp out the rope, stuff like that. So you can do all kinds of really cool special effects in photography, and then, just a couple minutes in Photoshop, and basically you can just, whatever crazy idea you have, you can make it a reality, which for me is just like the ultimate playground. We've got a couple more images. This is an image called Going Home. Crazy story. We didn't know, but this vine here, it turns out was actually poison ivy. And everyone got totally covered in poison ivy, but everyone was super nice about it, and we got a cool photo, so, everyone apologized. Because sometimes you do this stuff and the photo, like, doesn't even work out, so it's like, sorry, everyone. But everyone was super cool. This is, again, it's a simple composite here. So let's just take a look at the bottom part of the photo here. So what we did is just dug some grass up, so we just had some dirt. So the bottom part of this photo is, I'm just on a ladder, and she's just laying down doing this in the dirt. And I just photographed her from the top down on a ladder, just outside, right? So you can imagine, like, if you only look at the bottom part of this photo, it's like, yeah, I could do that. She's just laying down in some dirt, and I got on a ladder and photographed her. And then we break it apart and take a look at only this part of the image. She was just laying on her back with her legs in the air. You had some grass around there, and then I photoshopped some grass in front of her. And then the only difficult-ish part was this little transition area here. And that was just, I photographed some, we had some grass and we dug a little bit of dirt, and I just photographed just this. So just from here to there, I made sure to get a couple plates of those, and then put all those together, and we get this final image. I will say for stuff like this, it is important to sketch, just to kind of figure out, you don't want to start putting it together in Photoshop and you realize she's facing the wrong way and her body's trying to do something that couldn't exist. So did make sure to sketch to make sure the right leg was in front and everything like that. But again, just a couple of simple little tricks in Photoshop, and you can pull off an image like this. This is an image called Baxter. This guy, super close to my heart. I wanted to create a little Calvin and Hobbes type story, and make my own guy who I would go on adventures. I put myself in a lot of these photos, even though I'm not taking pictures of myself necessarily. It's still me, right? It's this is a story that I wanted to be involved in. I just chose a younger version of me, which is just a boy in this case, and then his best friend Baxter. So Baxter actually, he's a real guy. He lives in my Chicago studio. He's this big. He's maybe 3 feet tall. I actually built him out of fake fur, and I don't know if I can zoom into this or not. Oh, I don't think because it's a PowerPoint presentation, I don't think I can zoom into it. But yeah, he's got goat horns. Let me just paint on there. Those are goat horns. He's got fox fur eyebrows. His eyes are taxidermied eyes from an elk. He's got buffalo teeth. He's got fake eagle talons for claws. He's just made of foam and wire aperture on the inside, and then covered in fake fur. So again, he's just just a couple feet tall, but because of Photoshop, we get to make him like actually the size of the scene. So this composite is actually a little bit on the complex side because the scene itself, and I'm going to show you guys like a little video-ish thing in a second, but the scene itself, this side of the street here was not actually in this photo. This side of the street was from another picture. So we have the boy in this side of the street from one image, and then this whole other side of the street is composited together to make it look like it's part of the same alley, because I just thought it looked better. But you'll see in just a second that this was not what the street looked like. So here's just like a little buildup of this image. So you guys can see, I'll just click on it and hit play. Pretty cool, huh? I'll play it one more time. I think I can do that anyway. Did it do it? Oh, there we go. You can see, so the other side of the street, how it just changed. Because I wanted something for Baxter to be able to like lean against, and you saw we just photographed him in the studio, tried to match the lighting, and then popped him on to this other location. So again, similar principles we were talking about earlier, just photographing something in one place and moving it to another one. But in this case, we're just doing it a little bit more complex. Another example, this is Island of Morel. We've got 4 different witches here. It's actually the same person 4 different times, and they're trying to steal the soul of this little boy. I'm not sure what I was going through at that time, but that was the idea. So here we got like a little quick composite together too. So you can see it's just started out with one subject, because it's the same woman in each of these photographs, and then we have a small speed light here with a ping pong ball on it, actually, in a blue gel. So that's what's creating our light source. This was just built in our studio. Oh. Is it playing? Oh, yeah, there it is. So there you can see just compositing different images together to create the final photo. All right, and we got one more for you. This is an image called The Flood. Again, I actually did flood an abandoned barn in North Carolina. We got permission, amazingly. Someone said, yeah, sure, flood my barn, I don't care. But all of the water is actually real. It's just a combination of a bunch of different, like we had a giant trash can. We were just like, poosh, spilling down the stairs. So here's a little buildup of the shot itself. Is it playing? There you go. So you can see we photographed her without any water, made sure that exposure looked good, and then started adding all the water and just kind of photoshopped that all around her. Fantastic. So that's a little bit of my background, why I love compositing. It's kind of, little bit of my story from self-portraits all the way through my conceptual images. And now we're going to get into we're going to talk about like what makes a composite work, what to look for, and we've got a few different examples, and we're doing it all on the iPad. So super exciting. First thing we're going to do is a double exposure image together. Has anyone made a double exposure ever? Yeah, dude, like half you guys. That's fantastic. So those of you who have, did you find it like really easy, or did you kind of have to struggle through it? Struggle a little bit through it? Okay, well, I've got some tips for you that, the next time you do it, it'll be really easy. Okay, so basically with a double exposure, we're just going to do one with 2 images. You have a primary and a secondary image. So we're starting off with the primary image on our right. This is our subject, and to make double exposure super easy, all you have to do is make sure your subject is on a very light background. Like in this case, it's almost white. If you photograph them on a pure white background, that's even better, or against like a very light sky. Okay, that's super important. So your subject, and you want them to be like wearing fairly dark clothes. You wouldn't want them to be wearing light clothes, because we're looking for a contrast between light and dark here to pull off the effect. So as long as your subject is on a super light background, you've got half of the puzzle is taken care of for your compositing. Because we're just going to use blending modes to put this together. It's going to be super easy. Your next image, your secondary image, this you actually want to be the other way around. So you want your subject, or whatever you're putting in there, to be relatively light, and then ideally surrounded by something dark. So the idea is we're going to put these two together, and using a blend mode, the light areas from the original, from the primary image, are just going to cover up everything on the image, and we're going to be able to see through the dark areas to the photo underneath. So really simple concept. Again, just make sure your subject is on a very light background, and it's super easy to create a double exposure. So we are going to do it. Let's go ahead and open up Photoshop. All right, so this is Photoshop for the iPad. Did anyone watch like the keynote thing this morning? So you guys got to see this a little bit? Cool. Did they, I didn't watch it. Did they go through and show you like what all the tools were and everything like that? No. Okay, well, I'll do that. A little quick introduction. So we're gonna go ahead and start by just going to import and open. I've got all my images ready to go. Fantastic. And we're gonna go to our surfer example, and oh, nope, never mind. I just opened up the Photoshop document. There we go, just the stock image. And I'm just using Adobe stock for this, by the way. Okay, so we'll start off with just like a super quick overview of the program itself. And I'm assuming most of us are like Photoshop desktop users, have been for a long time. Yeah, totally. So if this is your first time, looking at the program, some of the things are like pretty similar to the Photoshop for desktop. Some of the things are pretty different, but basically you have your tools here on the left-hand side. So we've got our move tool, transform, we've got selection tools like the lasso tool, quick selection, some marquee selections. We've got brush tool, and there's a bunch of brushes that come preloaded into the program. We've got our eraser tool with the same deal, a bunch of brushes. We've got a paint bucket fill, so gradient tool, and our spot healing, as well as our clone stamp, and then of course like text and cropping. And then actually here, this little icon that looks like a picture frame, this is where you can add additional like images into what you're doing. So we're gonna do that in just a second. We've got a little eyedropper here. Of course, we know what that does. Our colors, foreground and background, super easy to switch. And then the nice thing here is if I do grab the brush tool, I have this little floating window that I can change my foreground, background colors, click and drag to make my brush larger and smaller. I can control hardness here. Sorry, that's opacity. So opacity, hardness, and then I do have options for flow as well, which is super nice. We're gonna use that in just a second. And then you can just take this little thing, boop, and dock it over there if you need to. There's this little floating thing, which is like, what is that little thing? It's basically Alt or Option. So like you guys know, if you need clone stamps tool, you'll need to sample a point. So this little guy is basically the same thing as holding down Alt or Option. Up here at the top, we have like undo, redo, your cloud syncing options, exporting. And then there's two different views for layers. This is your first layer view, which is like just a simple compact view. And then we have a little bit more of a detailed view here. And then we have our layer properties here as well. So you can do things like change your blend mode and change opacity and things like that. So a lot of what's built into Photoshop is available here. Obviously, this is like early release, so they're going to continue to add more. But it's like we're going to do compositing. So, definitely everything that you need to actually pull off compositing, which is pretty cool. You can add layers here, regular layers, adjustment layers, turn layers off and on. We've got layer masks, clipping masks, which I think that's the really big one. That's what makes this program at this stage actually like viable, in my opinion, is the fact that we do have clipping masks. And then we've got some filters, and here we have just other options for selecting our tools and naming layers, deleting layers, and things like that. All right, so first thing we're gonna do is bring in our second image. So let's go ahead, we're gonna click on our little picture frame icon. I'm gonna go into my files and pull in our other Adobe stock image. Up here at the top, you can see I've got some options for flipping horizontally and vertically. I can also, on the left-hand side, you'll see I can skew this and do all kinds of warps and whatnot. But for right now, I'm just gonna flip that horizontally and hit done. So next thing I wanna do is kind of get this into the right place. We're gonna click on our layers dialog, and again, they're layers dialog, there's just two of these different dialogues that basically just show you different views of your layers. So you can use whichever one you want. We're gonna go here for right now and open up our layer properties and just make this layer a little bit less visible. So what I need to do, and I'm just using two fingers to kind of pinch and drag and move this around, I need to resize this just so it fits in the right place. So we're just gonna use our move tool. There we go, and I'm selected on Let's bring that down. I'm selected on the layer with the surfer. All right, let's go to our transform and just make this a little bit smaller. And I'm just doing this all with my finger. Later, I'm going to bring in the stylus for a little bit more complex stuff, but like for now, we're just using my fingers, and it's actually super easy. It works really well. All right, there we go. So that looks pretty good. We're going to hit done now. Let's go ahead and bring our opacity all the way back to 100. So earlier we talked about having your subject on a light background and how that's super important. The reason being is we're going to use blending modes to put these two together. And my subject always wants to be on the top. So let's go ahead and change our layer order. I'm just going to click there, boop, put it right there on the bottom. And then my subject, we're just going to change the blending mode from normal, we're going to go down to screen. Okay, so what a screen blending mode does is it makes the light areas visible and it hides the dark areas of a layer. So that's kind of what we're seeing. We can see the light areas, it's hiding the dark areas, and because I have something under the dark area, which is just, the shirt, my subject's shirt, because there's something under there, it's just showing me what's underneath there. That's all it's doing. Okay, so with that set to a screen blending mode, there we go. All I have to do now is a little bit of masking, maybe a little bit of levels adjustment, and our double exposure is going to be done. So let's go back to our original image. I just want to make sure to clean up these edges because it's still pretty visible and doesn't look very good. So we're going to add a layer mask. Just click on your layer mask icon there. Let's go to our brush tool. Let's click and hold. I'm going to go to a soft round brush. There we go. And let's go ahead and start painting in. I just want to choose a large brush, and then I'm going to bring my flow a little bit lower. All right, so you can see, and I'm just doing this with my finger, which is crazy. You don't have pressure sensitivity if you're just using your finger, but if you decide to use a pencil, like an Apple pencil or another stylus, you actually can get pressure sensitivity. I'm going to get into that a little bit later. So next I have this area around her face. What I want to do is bring my flow of the brush really low, and that's just going to let me do a very gradual masking. So you can see I'm just going over this area over and over and over again. And that's just kind of very gradually blending it in. Fantastic. I can kind of pull it in there a little bit more too. So I think this already looks good. Now, if you do want to make your subject a little bit brighter, we can go ahead and add a levels adjustment layer. So you can do that right here in your layer properties. Underneath your blend mode, you can go to add a clipped adjustments. We're going to go to levels. And then I'm just going to make the brights a little bit brighter. So you can see as I make brights even brighter, basically what this would do, because it's a screen blending mode, is it starts to just hide more and more of anything that was on the underlying layer. So I'm just going to make my brights a tiny bit brighter. There we go. And we're good to go. So this is it. Let's just turn all that stuff off and check out our double exposure. It's pretty seamless, huh? Oh, it's way more contrasty up there. It looks like this over here. Yay! I don't know if we can turn the contrast down on those things. It's probably a bit much to ask. Anyway, just assume that anything up there looks way better over here. But I'll flip things around. Fantastic. So we just did a double exposure in like 2 minutes on the iPad. Psh, totally awesome. So super easy. Again, if you guys are wanting to do this for like maybe your own commercial work or just something you're doing, just photograph someone on a white wall or something like that. And big thing that I like to do with double exposure is try to tell a little bit more of a story of like who you're looking at. So in this case, we have a person holding a surfboard is like the portrait, and then them surfing underwater is like telling a little bit more of a story. So if I was doing like a portrait of like a sketch artist or something like that, I might take a portrait of them and then do something like a hand actually sketching as the double exposure, or like one of their sketches as the double exposure. So just something that you can kind of further tell the story of that individual. If you're doing a portrait, of course you can do double exposure with just about anything you want. I've done like outdoorsy people and then like the forest composited into them and all kinds of fun stuff. So super easy, double exposure. Let's get back into, bam. This is so cool. We're gonna get back into the keynote here. Okay, so that was our first example. What do you guys, pretty easy? Do you guys feel like you could do that? Yeah. I feel like you could do that too. It's pretty easy. Yeah. Our next example, we are gonna be doing some blending composites here. For this class, I wanted to just do a couple different types of compositing. So last one was just like every day. Of course, you can, it's just like a great thing to add to your portfolio. This is a little bit more of a conceptual. And then our last one, we're going to do like actually cutting a person out and putting them on a new background. So for this conceptual example, we're making jellyfish look like they're floating in a forest, which is super fun. So there are a couple things that I look for when I'm putting stuff like this together, because again, all these images are just Adobe stock. In this case, I didn't photograph any of these, but browsing through Adobe's any stock website, you're like, okay, well, what images are actually going to work together? Like that's the big thing. And through compositing, I found that certain things are just going to work better than others. Like just finding any random image and putting it with a totally other random image and making it look realistic, that's super hard to do. Generally, I want to find images that, already are going to work together. And we're going to talk about this in our next section as well. But for instance, here we've got a couple things going on. Okay, so the idea of jellyfish floating in this forest. Jellyfish obviously are normally floating in water. So I wanted to choose a forest image that had a lot of like water vapor in the air. Like this fog in this image is a super important part of pulling this effect off because it gives a bit of atmosphere. It lets you believe that like there might be something that floats in there. And the image almost looks kind of underwatery because there's a ton of fog in there. So adding a little bit of context from the subject that you're going to be compositing into the background really helps out a lot. The next thing that helps out is that these jellyfish are light on a dark colored background. And anytime you have that contrast, like dark subject, light background, light subject, dark background, it makes compositing much easier because you can use blending modes to basically do all the work for you. Like in our last example, I wasn't doing like a super detailed cutout of the surfer, right? I just let blending modes do the work. We're basically gonna do something very similar here. So my jellyfish are on a dark background. I'm gonna be able to use blending modes to basically get rid of that background super quick and easy, and then have them on our new background. So also, yep, contrast, we just talked about that. And now it's time for our Photoshop demonstration again. All right. You guys having fun? It's pretty cool, huh? I'm like blown away. I was like, I'm not gonna bring my laptop to LA. And then at the very last second, I was like, I should bring my laptop just in case. It's really cool. And I don't know, does anyone have like a new iPad or a new tablet that like, yeah, a couple of us. It's crazy stuff. You can actually like load, so he's got my camera there. It's just like a Sony camera, but it can wireless transfer to the iPad. And so I can do like, there's Lightroom on this too. You can do raw editing on this now, which is crazy. So like, I in a real sense, I would say that like in a year or two, I probably won't use a laptop like at all anymore. I'll probably have my desktop computer, and then anytime I'm traveling, just my iPad, because it's already like, as you can see, it's pretty much there. It's awesome. Okay, let's do our second composite. So we're gonna open up our files here. We've got our jellyfish example. We're gonna start with our background. Fantastic, and then we're gonna go ahead and bring in our jellyfish. So we just have our add images here. There we go, that looks good. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and open up our layers. This is, again, we're kind of getting a little bit more and more complex as we go through today's session. I just want to start off with all of our jellyfish in the scene in a way that I can actually see them. So we mentioned earlier we're going to use blending modes, and really anytime you have that contrast between light and dark, you can use blending modes to cut things out. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and open up our layer properties. We're going to change our blending mode of these jellyfish to screen. Exact same blending mode we used in our double exposure. So it's going to make the light areas visible and the dark areas invisible. So our first one set to screen. There we go. Our second one set to screen here too. And by the way, this is all the same like technology that you would find in Photoshop. So if you think this is cool and want to go try it on like Photoshop for desktop, it's the same exact process. I'm not, it's just the tools are in a different place and it's on a tablet instead of a computer. But you could do this on Photoshop for the desktop too. Just want to make that clear. All right, let's go ahead and close those down. I've got some jellyfish now. I'm going to see about moving some around. So just kind of like figuring out where, there we go, where I want these jellyfish to live. So I've got my little layer view now, okay? And obviously, it's not like, doesn't look real just yet. This one I want to put right about there. All right. You know what, this one, just shrink that down. Yeah, these ones I want to put right down there. So I'm going to use my transform. Let's go ahead and just click and drag. I'm still using my finger for this, by the way, which is like awesome. Okay, and basically at this point, I'm kind of building my composition. So I realize that it doesn't look realistic at all, but I'm just basically like figuring out where I want to actually put these things. All right, there we go. They're just going to be like way in the background. I'm trying to create some depth here as well. So just making some things like larger and closer to the camera and some things further away. I've got this little guy here, and I want to duplicate that layer. So we're going to click on this dot, dot, dot here on the bottom right and go down to duplicate layer. There we go. And I'm going to move this around, and I'm actually going to flip this. So let's go to our transform. I'm going to flip that horizontally and scale it down. And I can even just click in here. There we go. Let's hold that little thing down and kind of scale it a little bit. So I want it to look a little different from the other one. There we go. And let's just like put that right up there. Fantastic. So we're looking pretty good. Now, the whole deal is we're using a screen blend mode to hide the dark and make the light areas visible, but it's not perfect yet, right? Like you can still see some of the background, and the jellyfish don't look exactly realistic right now. So what we need to do is add some adjustment layers. Who's using adjustment layers like in Photoshop? All of us, yes. Who's using clipping masks in Photoshop? What, for real? You guys are awesome. This is so cool. This is like when I was teaching Photoshop like 5 years ago, like no one would have raised, maybe a couple people, because you guys are obviously Photoshop users, but usually like clipping mask, what's that? And now everyone's like, yeah, clipping mask. It's awesome. Anyway, so yes, we're gonna use clipping masks. So let's go ahead, open my layer view. I'm gonna just turn some of these off, and we're gonna start with our first jellyfish. So open up our properties. We're gonna add a clipped adjustment, and we're gonna go to levels. It's nice that it's built into it, like you just click on add clipped adjustment, cool. So here what we're gonna do is just make our darks a little bit darker, okay. And again, because it's clipped, it's only gonna affect the jellyfish layer. And we're gonna make our midtones a little bit brighter. There we go, let's make our darks a tiny bit darker, kind of meet it. There we go. And then I need a little bit of green in the jellyfish for this to look a little more realistic. So I'm gonna go to my different color channels. So obviously we have our RGB, just like levels in Photoshop. You can go into your red, green, and blue channel. Here my blue channel, I'm gonna pull a little bit of blue out of the highlights. Oh, never mind, I'm gonna do it right over here. Okay, so we're gonna pull a little blue out of our highlights, and you're gonna see it's just gonna blend in really nicely with our background. So just a levels adjustment layer, super easy. Now you can totally just copy levels adjustment layers onto all of these, but because they're in slightly different places, I wanna make a new levels adjustment layer for each of these and just make sure that they all work. Can you guys see an outline at all in that photo? I can't see one, but you have a bit more of a contrasted. Pretty much don't need to use a layer mask on the jellyfish now, right? It's awesome. All right, cool. Time for the next jellyfish. Let's turn these ones on. Okay, again, we're gonna add a clipped adjustment. We're gonna go to levels. Let's bring our black levels up here a little bit, which is just gonna hide our darks. Bring our midtones up. There we go. And we're gonna go to our blue channel and pull a little bit of green in there. Now, I realize on this one, one of the jellyfish is like in front of that tree. We're gonna mask that out in just a second, but can you guys see a border of that photo? I can't either. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure, because sometimes, projectors are different, and I'm like, it looks great, and all of you guys are thinking like, no, it doesn't. So good. We're on the same page. All right, let's turn that one on as well. All right, just gonna pop through it. Add a clipped adjustment is again. We're gonna pop some levels in there. All right. Bring that in there, and then fantastic. Cool. And then this one, I think it's a little bit visible. So on the layer itself, I'm just going to add a layer mask, and we're going to paint with black on our layer mask, just to make sure. And this is just like a nice fade, basically. I'm not trying to mask out the jellyfish perfect. I'm just trying to give the borders of that photo like a little bit of a softer edge. All right, where is our next jellyfish? Here you are. Okay, add a clipped adjustment to you as well. You're all getting the same treatment. Everyone's equal. It's like I have two brothers. We always used to fight over like who got the more Cheerios, you know? Anyone who's got kids, maybe you go through the same thing. Everyone's got the same amount of Cheerios in this photo, okay? You're all getting the same level adjustments. Alrighty. That didn't make sense to anyone. You have 3 boys. Yes! So, always fighting about Cheerios. Thank you. Validation. All right, we got our last one here. Let's add a clipped adjustment. Again, we're going on levels. And let's make this a little bit brighter. Fantastic. And we're going to add some, basically just take away some blue. All right, so we're looking pretty decent already. You know, like super simple effect. Again, we're relying on blending modes to do most of this compositing for us. And we're also just, in the images that we chose, like that plays a big role in how realistic this is going to wind up being. So our next step is making some of these jellyfish a little bit like blend into our environment a little bit more, because they're, you know, like this one is in front of those leaves. It should be behind those leaves. So let's go ahead and find it. Where are you? There you are, my friend. And we're just going to add a layer mask to this and then paint with our layer mask, just paint on. So I'm going to go ahead and bring out my little Apple pencil now. Fantastic. And I can use the pressure for size, so this little option here on the bottom. So the harder I press, the larger my brush is going to be. There we go. So anyone who's using, does anyone use like a tablet, like a Wacom tablet? Quite a bit of us, yeah. So you basically get the same thing here. I don't know if I would call it, I don't know. I still think I like my tablet, like my Wacom tablet, a little bit better, maybe because I'm more used to it, but it's pretty good too. All right, so let's go ahead and bring down our size. There we go. Is anyone in this room from Apple? Did anyone work on developing this in here? Okay. You did a great job. All right, let's go ahead and bring that down a little bit. Fantastic. So basically at this point, and it is actually honestly pretty cool that I can just go in here and paint this in. All right. I think the learning curve of using this sort of tablet is a little bit less than a tablet, you know, like a Wacom tablet that isn't a screen as well. Because this one you just like literally paint on where you want to go. Did it take you guys like a little time to like figure out how to use your Wacom tablet? Like a month or so to get the hang of it? Yeah, me too. After that though, I was like, oh, I'm not doing anything else in Photoshop without this thing. And then here I am, look at this. Not using my tablet. Crazy. All right, so we're just gonna kind of paint this in here. Just using a different tablet, I guess. All right, now in Photoshop for desktop, there are some selection tools, you know, like the magic wand tool, or maybe like select color range and things like that. I'm assuming that that sort of thing will get added in later variations of this. That, you know, so if you guys are used to using those sort of tools, you might find just like a slightly different workflow in Photoshop for the iPad. That's kind of what I experienced. But I was still totally able to do everything that I wanted to do. It's just like in a couple examples, I had to just do it in a slightly different way. All right, that looks pretty good. Got a couple more little guys here. All right. I'm doing my best to do this quickly so you don't have to watch me do this for an hour. But don't give me shit if it's not perfect. All right. There we go. Cool. All right, so there's our first one. I think it looks pretty good. Basically, it just sets it back in the scene a little bit. Let's see where our second one is. Just turn this off and on. These ones, again, we're just going to add a mask here. All right, and let's just make a larger brush. So we can mask all this away from the front of the tree. Fantastic. All right, and then I want to, two-finger tap to undo, by the way, just like in pretty much every other creative app for the iPad. Boom. Fantastic. Alrighty. Almost done here, guys. I just want to make sure it actually looks good, but I don't want to take all your time doing this one. All right, where's our third? There we go. This one I actually want to move a little bit. Let's go to our move. Just kind of bring that up a little bit there. We don't really need to mask that one out. Our fourth, we'll add a mask to that. Boom. Super quick. Alrighty. And then our very last one. Whoops. Fantastic. That's right down there. And just got a quick mask to that. All right, now I'm going real quick because, again, it feels like it's kind of just getting repetitive at this point. Hide, hide, hide. Okay, we all get it. We don't want you in front of that tree. All right. Well, there we go. Almost done. Damn perfectionist part of me. I can't just leave it. There we go. And check it out. Let's go ahead and hide our stuff. We got a conceptual composite photo in real time on the iPad. Isn't that awesome? Woo! I love it. So I want to just take a short break and ask some questions. Adobe didn't tell me to do this. I'm actually just interested. What do you guys think about Photoshop for the iPad? If you raise your hand, I'll point at you and you can say something. Yeah? No, not yet. I'm assuming, and I don't work for Adobe. Nope, I don't work for Adobe. Watch what you say, Aaron, because they are an awesome company to work with, but I don't work for them. My assumption is that they're probably going to add a lot of this stuff in for future variations. So just like doing this, I think was a big step. And exactly. Or even in this case, like a select color range, I could just like select a dark branch and then mask that in. So yes, a few of these features I'm like, okay, I'm crossing my fingers, and I imagine in a couple next variations, they're gonna add that stuff. I think they just wanted to get the core stuff in there for now. As far as I know, not smart objects yet either. Yeah, good question. Yeah, those are two of the things that I was like, all right, come on, Adobe. But they're doing really good with the feedback on theirs. I was a part of this beta team, and I was able to leave feedback on the app. Like it's, I don't know. Yeah, it's right there. Suggest what's next for Photoshop. I don't know if this will be on your install too, but you know, they were like actually listening. So I was like, all right, cool, good job. Yeah. You can, yeah. Let's go ahead and you can clip multiple adjustment layers too. So and we're gonna do that in our next section. Yes, yep, you can do that. Right, let's see, we're just gonna create a new layer here. There we go. Let's just draw with our brush tool. There we go, and I'm just gonna create a new layer, and then here's our clipping option. So, yeah, we'll just, there is a quick selection tool. It's under the lasso tool, so here's our quick selection. But right now, there's no magic wand tool. Yeah. Yeah. You can set, yes, you can set pressure for opacity here. So it's gonna let's say, let's go ahead and turn that on here, and I'll just create a new layer. Oh, sorry, so here's our brush menu. It's kind of nice, you can actually just pull that out, but on the very bottom, you'll see the 3 dots, and here's where you can change additional things about your brush. Personally, I'm excited that they included flow on here, because that's a big one for me. I use brush flow. That's at the bottom for use pressure for size. Yeah, so you can use pressure for size and opacity right down here on the bottom. Yep, definitely. So a lot of this is in there. Yeah.
Is there grouping for layers?
Yep, there is grouping. We're going to do that in our next section. This is where you want to enter in like multi-select. So this little dot, dot, dot on the very bottom right, this is where you can find additional information and more features about your layers. So if you go into this multi-select mode, you can now select a couple of different layers, and then the group folder appears, so you can go ahead and add them to a group and name the group. And you can also clip to groups, which is really nice too. It's one of my favorite things to do in Photoshop. Yeah. That's a great question. Let me just delete that group. I don't know, to be honest. Yes. It's not a link. Yeah. I don't know, man. Oh, here it is right here. Boop. Unlink and link the layer mask. Yes. You can do it. Yeah. Can you import brushes? At this time, I don't think you can. It does come with a bunch of these brushes, and you also can't create custom new brushes as well. But again, I'm assuming that you will be able to do that very soon. Yes? Definitely. As of now, there are 2, you can invert and apply a Gaussian blur. So obviously in Photoshop, we love I got 10,000 blurs I can use. Right now, it's just a Gaussian blur and an invert. And yeah, there are a couple more things that I'm like, come on, let's get this going. But yes, there's a place for it, which leads me to believe they're going to be pushing it out soon. Yes? In JPEG. You know, I don't know. I do use Lightroom. Do you guys want to just see if you can do it? See, and check out my cool photos on Lightroom. All right, so let me just make sure this is actually a raw file here. Yep, this is Katie, my wife. Say hi to Katie. Hi, everyone. Let's just export that out. I'm going to go ahead and save this to files. Oh, you know what? Even just saving this out, I can only save it out as like a JPEG. I don't think it's going to... let me just go to Edit In and see if it'll load up in Photoshop. All right. Oh, no, they haven't added support for it yet. So I'm guessing right now, probably not, because I mean, in my opinion, Lightroom for the iPad is really great. I think they did a great job with that piece of software. So my guess is they probably want you to do your raw processing in Lightroom and then export it as a JPEG. But you can edit TIFFs. What I have done is uploaded a 16-bit TIFF, like from my computer to my iPad, and I was able to open that too. So I definitely got 16-bit support on this, but I haven't tried just like a straight raw photo just yet. That's a good question. Maybe after the class we can try it. Yeah. Any more? Yes, sir. Yes. Totally. It feels different. It feels like glass. Oh, that's a good suggestion, yeah. Oh, good call. Yeah, okay. Yeah, hey, look at that. What am I doing up here? I'm going to sit down with you guys. Yeah, one more. Yes. It's just this one. Yeah, just this one is now. But there are, if you click on this little question mark up at the top, you can view gestures, touch shortcuts, and keyboard shortcuts. So the iPad does come with a keyboard. So you can use keyboard controls with the iPad if you have the keyboard. I just wanted to do the demo without the keyboard at all. But you do have those options as well. All right. Well, we're doing great. Let me just get to our last example, and then we'll do a little bit more Q&A. All right. So here we've got a cutout example. We're just going to go through some of the things that I look for when I'm doing an actual cutout in Photoshop. So the first thing is the quality of light. And basically for like actual cutout photography, like, you know, cutting that person out of the background and putting them on that one, there's a few things that I recommend looking at. One is the lighting. The second is the perspective. The third is the scale. And basically, the more things that you can match in the original photographs, the easier your composite's going to be. So in this one, we're talking about light quality. Now, we can see the image on the left is obviously a lot warmer than the image on the right, but the quality of the light is actually very similar. It's on the image on the right, we have an overcast day. It's, you know, soft shadows, very soft lighting on our subject. The image on the left, it's very, very early in the morning. We do have a little bit of shadows, but the contrast of the lighting is very low. So this is a lot easier to composite, by the way. If you want to do this type of compositing, I highly recommend starting off with images that are like have softer lighting. If someone's got like a bright sun, you know, kind of shining this way, not only are they going to have super well-defined shadows, that makes those shadows, you got to recreate those in Photoshop too, but then your background, it has to have the sun coming from the exact same way. Because if my subject's got a sun coming from here, my background's coming from, it's never going to look realistic. So keep a look at your light. The color and the light intensity doesn't matter so much. Like these images could be brighter or darker, and you can see they're very different colors, but the quality of the light is relatively similar, and that's what's going to help me put these together. So the next thing that I look at is perspective. Both of these were shot relatively low to the ground. The image on the right is a little bit lower. Looks like she's standing on a low wall there. So in other words, like I'm kind of like looking down on you guys. Looking down on you. I'm looking down on you right now, right? So my perspective is from up high. So if I took a picture of you and then you took a picture of me and we tried to put those together, it would never match up. Because I see the top of your head and you see the bottom of my chin, right? So your brain automatically is going to be like, that's not going to be realistic. So the angle of the photograph is super important. And these don't match exactly. Like my subject is technically, you know, the camera was a little bit lower comparatively to my subject on the right, a little bit higher on the left, but they're close enough to where we're going to be able to make it work. The next thing, oh, sorry, one more thing. Also, the focal length is pretty important. If you're photographing someone with a really wide-angle lens, just make sure your background's photographed with a wide-angle lens as well. It's super hard to make anything look realistic if those focal lengths are too far off. So we've got normal on the left, maybe 50 millimeters, and normal to telephoto, maybe 70, 80, 90 millimeters on the right. I'm just guessing here, but try to make those close. As many of these things you can match in the photographs, it's just going to make your composite more realistic and easier, honestly. And then scale, I recommend having some sort of object in your background that's going to help you out with scale, just so, you know, like in this case, like I know she's not going to be taller than that tree, right? Like, I hope not anyway. But it's going to help me like put her in that scene in a more realistic way. All right, so let's get into Photoshop. Here we go. We're just going to go to Import and Open. Again, 2 photos here. This is a little bit more of a complicated example because we actually have, we're doing a real cutout here. But let's go ahead and open up our background. There we are. Let's add in our photo. I'm going to go to Files and just pull in this Adobe stock. And let's go ahead and hit Done. Now, this one I did a pre-cutout of our subject already, just in case, because like time-wise and also might get like kind of repetitive because I mean, you guys have cut stuff out of the background, right? You know, it's like to do a good job, it could take some time. So, but I'm going to show you how I would do it on the iPad. Again, because I don't have access to channels just yet, but I have found good ways of cutting people out. So first I'm going to start off with just my lasso tool. And what I want to do here is just kind of get rid of as much of the background as I can. There we go. Oh, I started a little bit too late. All right, let's hit deselect down there. So I'm going to do most of the work with just a kind of like a quick and dirty tool here. All right, good deal. Let's go ahead and click on our mask button, and it's just going to layer mask all that away. Fantastic. So what I want to do now is try to get our subject in about the right place. Let's go ahead and open up our layer properties and bring down our opacity, and we're going to use our move tool to put our subject in about the right place. So I want her to stand like under that tree, and I'm going to use my transform to put her at about the right scale. And I don't know about you guys, but I always struggle with scale in my images. Like it's always like it happens all the time where I think a person looks good. I'll go take a break and come back and be like, they're twice as big as they need to be. It's always difficult. So I need you guys to help me with this. So what do you think? Should she be smaller than this? Something right about there. Also keep in mind that where she is front to back makes a big difference, right? Like if she's back there, all of a sudden she's huge, right? She's as tall as that sand dune. If she's in front there, she's tiny. So it really matters where they actually are in the frame. But how does that look as far as scale is concerned? It's okay? Fantastic. Now, a trick that I have when I'm doing this sort of thing, I can't tether my phone to display, unfortunately. But what I do now is I'll get a composite like roughly where I think it should be, and then I'll just airdrop it to my phone and see how it looks on my phone. Two reasons. One is the display on my phone is much higher resolution than the display on my computer. And also I'm just seeing it at a totally different form factor, and it just kind of resets my brain and allows me to see things in a new way. So I just started doing this within the last couple of months, and it's really helped out my compositing. So when I think it's good, I'll just airdrop it right to my phone and analyze it there again, and then if I need to make changes, I'll go do that on the original one too. So just wanted to give you that as like a nice little tip, because it really has helped me out quite a bit. So we're good. We're going to go ahead and zoom into our subject. I mean, these are full resolution images, so I can zoom in quite a bit. Now we do have our quick select. So the way I think quick select works the best for this app as of now is to go ahead and quick select. There we go, around our subject. Let me just make our brush size a little bit smaller on this. We've got if you have a selection open, you can deselect, erase, invert, and transform and select similar, which is nice. Let's go ahead and just try this again. There we go. Do you guys use the quick select in Photoshop? Yeah, I have the same sentiment as everyone in here. Not yet. Yeah, the quick selection tool, I've always, like, it hasn't ever performed exactly how I wanted it to perform. It does work pretty decent in here. Like, you can, paint on some areas, and it'll do some decent jobs, but, in this case, it's not really performing that well. So we're just going to deselect. We got two options from here. You can use the lasso tool, or because we do have pressure sensitivity for the brush, and I can just like take my iPad and rotate it around. Actually just like painting on your layer mask, that's just 2-finger tap to undo that. Just painting on the layer mask itself, because I'm using an Apple Pencil, is actually, let's just bring our flow up, is actually, in my opinion, totally a decent way to cut someone out now. I mean, this, without an iPad pencil, go. Let's just make sure our opacity is all the way up and our flow is all the way up. Without an iPad pencil and without the ability to like zoom way in and rotate the iPad itself, I would never suggest doing this. But I found that I'm able to cut someone out close to as quickly as I am if I were to use the like the pen tool in Photoshop. Oops. 2-finger tap to undo. There we go. I'm not going to do the whole thing like this because you guys would hate me. There we go. But this is basically my current favorite technique. I think when we get channels and you know, all the other advanced stuff. Probably gonna switch that up. But my current favorite technique is just getting in super close and using a brush tool. And you can see there, like, it totally works. Hair and things like that, because we don't have channels, that's a little bit more difficult. I have just been kind of like getting in really close and doing this. But I do have a pre-cut out example, and that's actually just a PSD. So I did this on my laptop and then just airdropped it right here onto the iPad, and I'll go ahead and bring it in now. So let's go back to home. Oh, actually, we don't need to go home. What am I doing? We're gonna just add our files, this little picture icon. We're gonna go to files, and then I have this, can you see yoga cutout? It's like 48 megabytes. That was actually a PSD that I created on the computer. There we go, and you can see we have full transparency on there. So another nice thing is, you know, you can start a project on your computer and finish it on your iPad and just kind of go back and forth with it. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and scale this down. There we go. Try to get about the right size. Another thing that I find helps when I'm trying to size things is I'll just like zoom way in and out. Like, I'll look at an image like that big and be like, does it look right? You know what I mean? Because when you're looking at something up close, it can be surprisingly difficult to tell things like even like light levels and scale. But when you zoom way out on something, it definitely helps out. All right, what do you guys think about that scale? Looks okay? It's about there? Okay. Fantastic. So now what we need to do is actually help our subject blend into the environment. And I have a couple of tips that I use here, little tricks. I do these in Photoshop, but we're able to do them here on the iPad as well. The first thing we're gonna do is just create a adjustment layer, and I'm gonna go to black and white. So by making a black and white adjustment layer over top of everything, it strips color information from what I'm analyzing. Because compositing realistically is all about analyzing, like, is this too light? Is it too dark? Is it too red? Is it too green? So if I'm able to strip away layers of information, it helps with my analysis of the images. So for instance, looking at this image now, it's obvious that my highlights are way too bright, right? Like, she's way too bright for that environment. Which, you know, without this layer visible, that might not have been the first thing that I would thought about, right? Looking at my full color image, I might be like, too blue, but, you know, maybe not my highlights too light. So that's one of the analysis tools that I like to use. Super easy, just a black and white adjustment layer. Another one, let's just create a new layer here. We're gonna grab our colors, just like super bright red there, grab my little paint bucket and fill this with red. And then we're gonna change our blending mode. I've got a couple blending modes that I like to use here. My first blending mode that I like to use is hue. What this does is it changes my entire image to the same hue. Okay, so now everything is red. I've stripped out all of my different hues. So what I'm essentially looking at right now is the differences in saturation between my images. For instance, I'll give you a little, there we go. Let me just add a hue saturation adjustment layer to her. So for instance, if it looks like this, you know, you make everything the same hue, and then you have an image like this, can you tell that she's way too saturated for that environment now? And this happens all the time. Okay, maybe I'll just hold up my iPad, because it's actually kind of hard to tell on that screen. All right, on this iPad, can you tell that she's way too saturated? Okay, so if you bring in an image and your subject just like looks way too saturated, then immediately you know I have to turn my saturation down. Like, I have a saturation issue. Because with compositing, it's always gonna be a light issue, it's gonna be a hue issue, and it's gonna be a saturation issue. If you can solve all of those things, you're gonna create more realistic composites. So this little trick with having just a layer at the top and the blending mode of that layer set to hue, it unifies the hue of everything, and it makes it much easier to see just relative saturations. Also, you can set this to luminosity. Sorry, we'll go to the next one, which is saturation. Okay? Setting this to saturation, because I'm using a bright red layer, what this does is increases the saturation of everything in my image, and it exaggerates hue. So now I'm able to see, like, that doesn't look like it belongs at all, right? Like, the color is way off. So by exaggerating the hue of everything, it gives me a little bit of an easier way to tell. Basically, when your composite works, and I have my hue layer on, my saturation layer, and my black and white layer, all of those should look flawless. That's the goal, is to make it look perfect with all of these crazy exaggerations on. So right now I know I have like a big hue issue, right? Like she's got way too much magenta and way too much blue in her, right? It just doesn't look like it fits. So what do we do about that? Well, we can use, let's go ahead and just delete this hue saturation layer that I just made as an example. We can use adjustment layers to correct this. So let's go ahead and add a clipped adjustment. We can use levels for this. Again, I've pretty much used levels for my light corrections and color because you can do a lot with levels. For instance, if I go into my blue channel and I start pulling down the highlights here, my blue channel, I'm adding yellow to my highlights, but at the same time, I'm darkening my highlights. So instead of just going to my gray channel, or my RGB channel and darkening it there, because I have a color issue here, what I'm gonna do is go to each one of my color channels and pull my highlights down for each one of my color channels, so that way I'm able to get my color balance at the same time that I'm doing my light levels. So I should be able to do the majority of my color work here with just one levels adjustment layer. Okay, what time is it, by the way? They're clapping in there. When do I end? I ended 2:15 in 1 minute? Oh my God, crazy. Okay, let's go to our blue channel. Let's finish it up. Let's go to our blue channel. We're gonna pull that down a little bit. We're gonna go to our green channel and pull that down a little bit too. So we're working on a balance there. Now I'm gonna turn these layers on and see how see that was our before and our after. See how in the after it just works a lot better? Let's do the black and white layer, okay? There's our before. No, sorry, there's our before and there's our after. So we're able to target our issues using these exaggeration or check layers and then fix them. Let's just turn, there we go, turn those both off. We got one more, we need to do another clipped adjustment. We're gonna add another levels, and then this is just gonna be for the ground. So I didn't cut her all the way to the ground. That's my another tip, is don't try to cut a person all the way out. Like keep the ground in there and then just make the ground from the original look like the new ground, okay? So I'm just gonna use my fill here. We're just gonna fill our entire mask with black, all right? Just gonna paint my brush. There we are. Let's just change our brush size here to make this only visible right here. So you can see she's got the original ground in there, and now all I have to do is get in here and just change the color of this original ground. There we go. Mask it out using just a super soft little mask. There we go. And I'm able to blend the new ground with the original ground. And there we go. So we've got a full cutout composite on the iPad. Woo! We did it! Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This has been fantastic. Oh, by the way, Flern.com, I teach Photoshop and photography in Lightroom, all kinds of stuff. And if you guys want to save 20%, we have a subscription. You can get an entire year of every tutorial we have. You guys can save 20% using that coupon code. So take a picture with your little phone there. I'm going to take a picture of us because I'm obsessed with Instagram. Duh. All right. Can everyone put your hands up in there? Woo! 3, 2, 1. And I'll tag everyone. Fantastic. And they want me to put this survey up too. So please take the survey and, be honest or be flattering. That'd be even better. Thank you so much. I'm going to hang out so we can hang out and chat afterwards. I'll flirt you later. Had to say it.